That's true. Naked Palpatine.
Oh, you pick that one. Fresh out of the clone tank, nude Palpatine is my
Well, that's the first thing I think of when you say Dark Empire Palpatine. Hello everybody and welcome back to the Malazan universe. Today, I guess I'm just getting used to just calling it Malazan instead of what I used to call it. I'm kind of getting used to it and preferring it. Anyway, point being, where are we at? We were at the novels of the Malazan Empire. We're on book 5 out of 6 of those. We are on Blood and Bone by Ian C Esslemont. This seemingly takes place during the Crippled God. A sale, I imagine, would either happen also during the Crippled God or right after. Would be, but I haven't read it yet, so I'm not sure. This story takes place in Jakaruku, which is a place we've heard about a few times in the Malazan Book of the Fallen, but we never actually got to see. So Esslemont gets to explore a whole new location here for us to enjoy. Because as far as original locations go, we have Stonewielder, which is an original place that you don't get to see in the Malazan Book of the Fallen. Same with Blood and Bone and Assail. Those are all new locations. Orb Scepter Throne is back in Darushtistan, so you're back in familiar territory, but you get a little more in-depth into the Segula and the Moranth. And the Return of the Crimson Guard gives you a bit more of the political situation going on in Quantali with the Malazan Empire. And the Night of Knives, of course, is the night where Lysine became the Empress. So, basically in Malaz City for a good portion of that. So, but for 3 books out of this, you're getting entirely new settings, which only make the world feel bigger than it did originally. I mean, we already had a couple different continents, but here's some more new ones for you in this thing. So, if I had to, and I mean, other people have said this, I'm nothing new. I mean, I won't lie to you. I know who AP Canavan is. I know who Philip Chase is. I'm gonna read his trilogy of books, by the way, at some point. But, like, what am I gonna add that they haven't already said, right? Like, they are the guys when it comes to Malazan. That and 10 Very Big Books podcast. However, Philip Chase and AP Canavan are more actually about, like, the nuances and the themes and stuff. But yeah, this very much is the Heart of Darkness, Apocalypse Now sort of jungle story. There's always this sort of story and culture, or at least in recent memory, that I should say, about the whole idea of, the jungle and the man. The place where I'm most familiar with that is actually from the Star Wars Expanded Universe. Sorry to plug that in again. But there is a similar sort of theme going on with a novel by Matthew Stover that took place during the Clone Wars called Shatterpoint, which is about Mace Windu. And in that story is very much, he's in this jungle planet and he is, dealing with civilization versus the jungle. And what does that mean? The 2 stories, this Blood and Bone and that, are not exactly going in the same location, but there are similar beats hit in both stories. We have a couple different plot points from Merc and Sour, who are like these mages within the Malazan Empire. But of course, they're not a part of the Bone Hunters, so they actually work for Malik Rel, would be the difference there. Not that we really get too much on that either. We still don't, he's just in charge now, and there's still no conclusion to that. Maybe Karsa kills him and the God is not willing. I don't know, I haven't read it yet. I mean, I know Karsa's not in it, which is a little disappointing, but still, I don't know what's going to happen in the next 10 years. I guess we'll find out together. But so there's Merc and Sour. I think Merc and Sour are a really fun duo. Probably one of the funnest duos that Esslemont provides us, though I hear great things about Path of Ascendancy, so I'm sure I'll enjoy Dancer and Caliban a lot more in that trilogy. But we'll get there when we get there. We also have this mysterious lady, or little girl, I should say, or like teenager, I don't know. I imagine something before an adult, with Celeste. Excellent game, by the way. But there's a video game named Celeste, that's why I made the joke. Then we also have Spite, the sister to Envy, daughter of Draconis. They're in this story. We have a bunch of new characters, which my favorite plot point of this entire story was probably Sang and Hanu. They're natives to this region of the world, and I don't really want to mention anything about their story, but it's really interesting. And I struggle in these Esslemont books to really like feel for the characters like deeply and emotionally. I like them, but I don't really like love any of them. But I really was invested in their plot point. We also have Jatel. I don't know how you would say that, but he works for the Thermotags. I don't know how the fudge you say their name, but the guys. I don't even there are there's many people in these jungles, and they want to like seemingly take over. And then you also have what is it the the what was it called? Righteous Chastisement. I wrote it down somewhere. It was a really funny name. Hold on. I could have sworn. Well, it's something Righteous Chastisement, and I thought it was really, really funny. The name, Army of Righteous Chastisement. Sorry, and they kind of want to tear down the jungle. They want to put in all their stuff. Because the jungle's uncivilized. It's very much the idea. The uncivilized world versus the civilized world, and that's a big portion of this book as well. We also have things that are connecting us to Malazan, Book of the Fallen, with a particular piece. I don't want to like downplay it or overplay it, but you know, like like in Harry Potter, there are Horcruxes, and there are various aspects of Voldemort you must get rid of or free or whatever to completely get rid of Voldemort. You can't just murk him outright. There's a sort of and it's not exactly the same, but there's a similar sort of situation going on in this story that does, in the ultimate sense, even if not directly, connects it to the finale of the Crippled God and how that all came to conclude. Without this story, that theoretically couldn't have happened. So there's that. Again, we have the Crimson Guard. You'd figure we have Kaz and Shimmer, Cole, and a couple others. And we also have Skinner, though. If you remember, Skinner was the one that was the basically villain of Return of the Crimson Guard. He wanted, to be in control of the Crimson Guard. The story doesn't necessarily make him be sympathetic in a supreme way, but it does give you a bit of context as to why he feels this way. I don't think it's a spoiler to say that, you could feel this if you're reading through these books, but there's a point near the end of the book where it is mentioned, Shimmer kind of thinks about what Skinner is saying. There's a bit of truth to it. They are a mercenary company that doesn't get any work. They have no money, and they never pick up any jobs. They have made a eternal vow to destroy the Malazan Empire, and yet they are as far away from the Malazan Empire as possible. And then, also on top of that, they are dwindling in numbers, but they don't recruit more, or that they hardly ever do. I think the last one that might have been added was Kyle, but that's like it. So it's like how are they fulfilling the reason they have stayed alive all this time for anyway? So there's a bit of that going on too, and it's really actually interesting. And then we have a story with Osiric and Gothos, which was pretty fun. It doesn't seem that relevant until the very end, I'll tell you that. You're going to be like, why is this in here? But it's still a really fun portion of the story, and I really enjoyed it. Overall, I think I really enjoyed this. I don't know if I enjoyed it as much as Orb Scepter Throne personally, just because Orb Scepter Throne's familiar to me, and this I had to learn about a bunch of new characters again. It was it wasn't as bad as Gardens of the Moon, but it was again I gotta go, and I thought I was done with this after Midnight Tides, but here I am learning about all these people again. So Though I will say the biggest thing this book did for me personally, and I watched an AP Canavan video after the fact, so I can't take all the credit. We'll put a link in the description to his video in description. But I already had similar thoughts before I watched the video, so he kind of just confirmed a lot of them and helped me kind of think through it better because I didn't exactly know how to explain my reasonings. But it makes Kallor this book. I mean, I already had a bunch of other things from the other books, but this really kind of puts into context some things and makes Kallor seem much more like a tragic figure than he was in the past. Because if you remember back in the Memories of Ice prologue, they mentioned the whole thing with the Thermategs over in Jakaruku, which we never got to see, and how Kallor was in charge of a huge amount of people there. And the Thermategs, the story portrays it as Kallor being this evil dictator and he murdered all of his subjects. But is that really the case? Is that really what happened? I'm not exactly sure. AP Canavan has made me more convinced that that's not the case. Anyway, so I think this book does a good job along with the other Erikson books, but this kind of helps reaffirm the idea that maybe Kallor isn't as bad as we have made him out to be. Perhaps there's more to him than meets the eye, and he's certainly not a good guy. He's not a hero, but I don't think he's a villain either. I think he's an antagonist, and I think he has justifiable reasons to be. That doesn't mean that he's in the right. It just means I understand him a bit better. So I think that's one of the greatest aspects of this story for me is that aspect of that. But yeah, overall, I think the story is really great. I really enjoyed it. It's probably one of the better Esslemont books, and this one feels the most like Erikson. I mean, all the book they have similar styles and stuff, but this I feel like at this point, I feel like Esslemont's been continually growing in his writing. I mean, like I said, I don't write. What the hell do I know? Why am I telling you guys good writer's not a good writer? I'm not saying that. I always think Esslemont was a good writer, but I think he has continually improved his writing every release. So Night and Eyes felt the weakest, especially if you're going directly from that to Erikson, but every book following has gotten progressively better. I think Return of the Crimson Guard has some pacing issues. I think Stonewielder is phenomenal. I really love Orb Scepter Throne, though I think there's a little bit of pacing issues there as well. And this is pretty solid. I don't think there's any point where I was like, this is too long in this particular story. But again, pacing is entirely subjective. But anyway, I think it's really great. I'm really excited to read Assail, but I'm especially excited to read his prequel stuff because as I hear that's like where Esslemont shined the brightest was those prequel books. But we won't get to those for a while. But I'm really looking forward to reading those. And I really enjoyed reading this one. So to throw some shade at the Expanding Universe crowd if they so happen to be watching for some reason. Not gonna lie, I feel like I got more out of this than I did in Shatterpoint. I'm sorry to say. If we're gonna go for a Heart of Darkness or Apocalypse Now sort of vibe, I think Esslemont did a better job than Stover. I mean, Stover with his prose is very, very, very purple. But in terms of actual writing quality and the substance and themes behind all of it going on in the story, I think Esslemont wins out here. So if there's any Star Wars fans watching, which I doubt, there's my hot shade for you today. Anyway, that's pretty much it for non-spoiler, guys. I'm going to get into some of my thoughts, not all of them. These are long books. I mean, this is shorter than the Erikson books, but, so if I miss something, let me know what some of your favorite parts or most interesting parts for you were down in the comment section below. I'm getting into spoilers. This is your final warning. If you don't want that, then get out of here, please. Thank you. So we meet Sang and Hanu, the brother, and Hanu loses his tongue, so he has to use sign language. And he does an interesting thing of having the words italicized to indicate that he's signing to her, which I thought was cool because they made up some sign language together. It's not like American Sign Language. It's not ASL. It's not like how are you or or I took sign language for 2 years in high school. I didn't take Spanish, so there are white kids who know how to speak Spanish better than me, even though I'm an Hispanic, and but I don't remember most of my ASL years. I remember how are you. And I remember, I think this is how is your day? I don't know. I forget. I only remember the ABCs because I haven't been in high school for a while now, and I'm being increasingly reminded that as the years go on. Unfortunately. I'm 1 year away by the time of this. I mean, right now it's December, but by the time you're watching this will be in 2025, which means that I am 1 year away from 25 myself, which is, I am now a quarter, which is crazy, or will be. Anyway, getting off topic. Point being, um, so it was interesting to see how Esslemont kind of like wrote the sign language in there. And of course, New Continent I mentioned before already, um, and the Thaumaturgs or Thaumaturgs, I don't freaking know, but they're kind of ruling right now a big portion of this place. Uh, Kaz, I don't remember him being too much in Stonewielder, and he wasn't in a lot of Orb Scepter Throne if he was at all. And all of Return of the Crimson Guard, they were looking for him, but he's here now. He just seems rather aloof, you know. We also meet Skarza, a Trell, which is cool because I mean, really the only other Trell of note I can think of is Mappo, so it's cool to see another one. Spite is back. We love Spite. We also meet Merkin Waro, aka Merk, and Hint, aka Sour. We also meet Smiley, aka Ewan. And the capital of the kingdom of Thaumaturgs is Andalipura. And then this is also where we get introduced to the army of righteous chastisement. We meet in the army of righteous chastisement is this guy named Golan, who's pretty funny. We also meet Jatel, this like prince, I think, of the Thermatigs. I got kind of lost. I'm not gonna lie. I'm pretty sure that's what that is, but I'm also not sure because I don't know. I'm gonna just be completely honest because I read this from beginning to end, and I still don't exactly remember what Jatil is about. So that I swear to you, I read this book. I'm just stupid sometimes. I know to reread, I'm gonna feel so dumb. But he's like trying to get with this princess and Dina and Darini. I don't freaking and Danny. I don't know. I can't. But you know, she's very seductive, and he doesn't know if he's being played or if she genuinely wants this partnership. But much like most of us men, except for the strongest of us, he frankly doesn't care either way because she's really attractive, which fair enough. Um, Chained, aka Shattered, aka the Crippled God, his chaining happened in Jakaruku. Also something, because I had this huge stupidness when I first read Memories of Ice way back when, that Kallor was the crippled god for some reason. I don't know how I made that mistake, but I realized my error of the ways by the end of the book. But very clearly, Kallor is a separate thing from the crippled god. What I didn't realize until now was that the crippled god was summoned by the Thaumaturgs, or whatever. But I misstopped. Those guys. He was summoned by them because they didn't like Kallor. So it's really interesting with that. But there's a piece of him because he came down like meteorites in Jakaruku, which is what a lot of these characters are here looking for. And this is also where we get introduced. We're not introduced, but we see that Elsric and Gothos are hanging out. We also get introduced to Ponlor and Kun Sen and Kenjak, Ashrajak, Akajak. These are different ways to pronounce the name, I suppose. This is where we meet Celeste. And Celeste is an interesting thing. She's basically an aspect of the crippled god that is here. And there's actually even a phenomenal relationship between Merc and her that, you know, things get settled by the end, but it's a really interesting dynamic for most of the story. Also, the more that the crippled god is healed, the more harm for the Malazans is what the Crimson Guards hope for, which is why they're looking for the peace. Also, I don't know if I'm tripping balls. I'm pretty sure I wasn't. In the Mekros city, Mekros city being I think, one of the floating cities that was no longer floating. Another name for it. No. Floating cities in Moonspawn. Mekros are these floating cities on water, just to be specific. So they're not actually. I mean, they're floating, but it's not like in the air or anything. It's just like it is. It's like having a tiny island, but it's moving around. You know. Anyway, so a creation of the crippled god, like a monster, is in the city, which I thought was pretty cool because they fight that thing. And then the crippled god's heart is in a robot, unless I was mistaken, or like a cyborg sort of thing. So that was cool. And its name is Veng. Also, not the Thermatics. There are these other people that worship this being named Kallor, and I immediately went, wait a second, Kallor. You know what that sounds like? Kallor. And I guess I was right. We also meet an interesting character, Old Man Moon, who claims to be the literal moon, which was an interesting part of the book. Queen of Dreams, which is another character we got introduced to. I don't really mention her before, but she's doing stuff. And she has a scene between Shadowthrone and Cotillion. But she refers them as usurper and rope. And then later on, when they're talking with each other, they refer to each other by their human names, which I thought was really interesting. So, because Calivan's not, it's Animandis or whatever. And then, you know, Dancer's also like a title. So they refer to each other by like their actual names, which I thought was really interesting. I mean, not really interesting. It was just something I noticed because they usually don't like, I don't know. It's like they went from like nicknames that this lady had for them to like their actual names, and I just was like, oh, okay, I guess they're doing that. The forest consumes all was a conversation that was had, which was one of the more philosophical, interesting parts because it reminded me a lot more of the Erickson books. Because there's a little bit less philosophy and sort of those things in the Esslemont books. There's also a big giant worm, but it's not in sand. But it immediately made me think of Dune, so that was pretty cool. Edgewalker, very briefly in this story, but again, it is interesting because Edgewalker plays a part at the end of the Crippled God, but he's also here, and he's also been, if you've been reading, you know, publication-wise, like, he's been around since Night of Knives, so it's been interesting, or at least in terms of the story, he's been in it. Mail such Bug is mentioned, you know, because we love Bug and Mail, and but yeah, it's just a little mention, but I just wanted to mention it because I love that character. Also, there's this really terrible scene where these soldiers are in like this hospital tent and there's worms like in the eyeballs and their noses and their mouths, and it's just like constant pain. They're like coming off, like wriggling all around. It's just gross. And then so the mage just like burns him alive because it's like, you know, a mercy. But it was crazy. Temper's back again. Temper shows up, I think, in the Crippled God, and you'd be like, who the frick is Temper? But if you're reading the Esslemont books, then you know Temper, because Temper was the old man in Knight of Knives, and now he has like this bigger, like kind of like mystical role to play. Not like huge or anything, but still, it's like crazy that the first time we saw this guy, he was just like an old veteran, and now here he is being like kind of important. So, you know. War leader, there's this war leader that I'm not sure if that was meant to be Kallor, because Kallor doesn't get mentioned by name till later, but there's this war leader who provides a blessing and a curse to Jetel of pain. Then also we have Skarza and Jetel join forces together to get revenge. And then everything kind of comes to a climax. And stuff happens with Celeste there. It's really cool. Stuff happens with Spite. Stuff happens with Skinner. Skinner, you know, faces his comeuppance. A lot of people like get an opportunity to see the world from a broader perspective in the story. You know, to kind of change their ways. But the people that don't, they suffer the consequences, and the people that do, you know, they're okay. And that's kind of like the theme and the purposeful thing in this book with that. But Skinner doesn't learn his lessons, and so he faces the prize for it. It becomes a bunch of like little spiders, which was cool. Um, but at the very end, we actually get to see Kallor talking, and that's what really just like set me off on like now I gotta look up a video about Kallor because I didn't think we are gonna see him again, and so I found the AP Canavan video, and again he can say it better than I ever can. I'll leave a link in the description, but we kind of end with Lorik and Spite. And Lorik, is interesting. He's one of the few Leosin characters in the Malazan Book of the Fallen that we actually pay attention to. I know there's like the whole battle going on in Dust of Dreams and the Crippled God, but like in terms of like actual human characters to follow, like we don't have that many like Leosin um, people to like get their POVs from. So it was cool to see him come back. And we just get a lot of little lore things here and there from like shape changers, which is a little different from soul taken or divers, where they're like they've interbreeded so much or like whatever that they can't actually transform to and fro. So they're like a mix between an animal and a human. We get like a tiger person, I think, in this story, which is really interesting. Like just again, just like all these creative ideas that imagine this like a Indiana Jones like forest with like tiger men. Just like I don't know, it sounds so cool. Also super dangerous and scary. But yeah, I really enjoyed this story. And again, I most of like the actual like big brain stuff I had to like watch a video for because it totally went over my head the first time through. But 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 I had a lot of fun with it. Um, I had a lot of fun with it, but I was also I'm not gonna lie, I was also bored during a lot of it. And that's kind of the case with a lot of the Erickson books and the Esslemont books, because I'm just not smart enough to enjoy things from beginning to end. But again, overall, I really enjoyed it. So there's more that could be said, but I mean, I watched AP Canavan and Philip Chase's video on it, and they kind of said like everything, and I don't feel like I'm stealing from them. So if you want more in depth, go watch the video. But I'm pretty much with the same sentiment. Um, but yeah, we have one more left. We have a sale. Then I'll read everything in this time period of the Malazan universe, and then after that, we'll move on to the prequel stuff with Forge of Darkness, Fall of Light, and the Path to Ascendancy by Esslemont, which I really look forward to reading. And then, of course, the sequel, God is Not Willing. But that's pretty much it, guys. Up next, we're taking a small break from Malazan to read 2 books in the Star Trek Litverse. And then after that, we will return with A Sail by Ian C Esslemont, the conclusion to the novels of the Malazan Empire. Until then, guys, well, you don't have to go into a jungle in order to appreciate other cultures more. But perhaps, no matter how you view life, whether you're an atheist, whether you're religious, whether you believe certain values are true versus this, you look at someone on the street and kind of judge them, I don't know. I'm just saying, like, you don't have to go to the middle of Africa to appreciate other cultures, but you can have a responsibility and a duty to learn about other people, to learn about other cultures, and to learn to appreciate said cultures. You never have to actually go over there. I mean, a lot of people don't even have the money to afford going to all these places. I mean, traveling out around the world, getting into like imagine just going to like Buddhist temples and like hanging out with some Buddhists for a bit just to like get their vibes and understand how their day to day is. That sounds really cool. Will that ever happen for me? Probably not. I don't got the money for that, but I can read and I can learn and I can appreciate. And I think that's one of the biggest things that you can do if you don't have the means or funds to go view all these cultures yourself personally. Though if you can, I mean, maybe if that's something you're into, go for it. But otherwise, take the time to learn about other people and make sure your assumptions are not clouding you, and just be open to different ideas, different beliefs, and different structures of things. Just so the world is vast and huge, and we may escape into the fantasy world where we read all these stories about these worlds with multiple different continents and stuff, but we have our very own reality with all these different continents and places. And most of us don't have the opportunity to explore all of it. You know, even if we had all the money in the world, we'd probably never explore all that this planet alone has to offer. But I think, if anything, the biggest takeaway to get from this book is that I think we all can do a bit more research, just so, even if we never get to go, we can appreciate the vast amount of history and lore, I guess, that our own world has. We just call that history. We don't call that lore in real life, but there's so much there to explore. So I hope this story inspires you to do so. And yeah, I guess that's it from me. But until next time, yeah. I'm trying to find an outro. Celeste is cool. I guess we'll leave it at that. And next time you find yourself in a forest, spray some bug spray on, please. Thank you.